Awesome. We're live. Hello, Sup Connectors. Happy Thursday or Friday, depending where you are in the world. Happy to be here. My name's Kristen Thomas, and Sup Connect lets me do this every Thursday. I get to chat with interesting, amazing people all around the world. We're going all the way to England today, so thank you. You guys are good sports because it's pretty late in the evening there, 8 p.m. I believe. Remember that though it's live, and we're thrilled if you're here, whether you're new or returning, that you can watch this recorded. It immediately, because we're on Instagram, goes to IGTV, and then we will get it on SupConnect. We'll get it on their YouTube first, and I grab it and put it on KT Outside also. So tell your friends if they didn't get a chance to listen to and hear about Brendon Prince. Big stuff happening this year for him and in the years previous, but especially in the stand-up paddle world. The longest paddle ever circumnavigating the mainland of Britain, and also just recently was voted SupConnect Man of the Year. So super excited. I have not met Brendon in person, but love talking to everyone. We've had some great interviews with people from the UK, and I'm sure Brendon will be no exception. He's here. I'm pretty sure I saw him jump in. Thanks to everybody who's listening. Again, it always makes me smile. So cool that you're. Feel free to ask questions or to say hello or to tell us where you're from while we're chatting. Can you hear me?
Hey, how are we doing?
Yay!
I can hear you loud and clear.
There's always that pause and that hesitation of whether technology will work, and it's working today. Yay! Well, thank you. I can't thank you enough. I know you are a speaker, a motivational speaker by trade. And so to do this for free for us for SupConnect is really awesome. So many good things to talk about. Super excited. I'd love to start just with your water story. I know you have a lifeguard swimming past. So guessing water was part of your life pretty early. So start with that and then move into where did stand-up paddle come along?
Well, first of all, just awesome to talk to you. So really cool that you guys wanted to speak to me. So the water story, do you know what? I was about 6 and my parents bought a farm in Wales, which is right next to England, and had a river at the back, and one of these sort of deep meandering rivers. So I just grew up building things that floated. That's what I did. That's what I did. And the weird and the wonderful. And even back then, I remember things that I stood on. And you did like gondolas more than stand-up paddleboarders. But that's where it kind of came in, really. And then a life of kayaking, lots of whitewater work, lots of big rivers around the world, that type of thing, surfing, getting at every opportunity the water. And then a local surf company actually said, do you want to try this really big surfboard? So I was one of those first people that kind of people pointed at and laughed at because I was standing doing this with a paddle that was so heavy that after 4 or 5 minutes, your shoulders were killing. So yeah, I got into stand-up and just loved it. And, I've got a background of playing rugby all my life, and which means that most of my body doesn't work anymore. So the pop-up, things like that started to hurt through my 30s into my 40s. And stand-up paddleboard just meant there's a lot of shoulder work. My shoulders are still good. And it didn't hurt in the same way surfing did. It didn't hurt in the same way sitting down for a long time on a kayak did. So it just came naturally. And of course, I started surfing first. That was my first venture into SUP. Then I just thought, I want to see if I can go around this headland and go and I was trying to do it on a 9-foot board, so it wasn't particularly enjoyable because these things just don't go in straight lines. But the bigger boards started to come out, and the sort of adventure and race boards were a bit more as they are now, let's say. And that kind of love and adventuring and just going, disappearing for a few days really came in. And that's why I suddenly thought, do you know what? Perhaps I could go a bit further and potentially paddle around Britain.
I just love that. So it's great that you've turned this, passion for water, passion for adventure, using it as a platform for safety. You call yourself a water safety crusader, which I just love because there shouldn't ever be any deaths, but we know that everything around water, it's Mother Nature, and there are things that you need to know, and not everybody does, and accidents happen, but many are avoidable. So love that you've launched that, and definitely want to talk about that too. But maybe some adventures leading up to the big one you just had, and then I definitely want to delve into this 4,000 miles, 141 days, setting a record going around Great Britain. But did you have some shorter ones before that? Still the
Yeah,
long
I
paddle
think,
stuff?
yeah, I don't think you can just suddenly go into something like this. So, in my 20s, I climbed some pretty big mountains around the world. I did some pretty big paddling. I paddled down the Indus when I was 19. So, that was some fairly major paddling. So I was kind of knew what these sort of things expect. But living where I live, it's a beautiful place, very settled, an amazing family. We're on the water all the time. I teach a lot of water, from sailing to all the different elements that you could possibly imagine, really, through my 25 years as a school teacher. That's what I did. I was head of outdoor education. So, a big background of water there. Um, and I suppose the paddling was a natural vehicle. It was a natural medium to think, do you know what could I do to get more people listening about my message of water? Because I mean, you'll be the same. If you spend long enough around water, you see people get into trouble. And as a lifeguard as well, unfortunately, I've lost too many souls, and most of those, if not all of them, were accidental, accidental drowning. And that's hard to come to terms with, hard to not think, can I do something about this? And that's where kind of the paddling came in to give me a vehicle for wonderful people like yourself to chat to me, and at the same time I can slip those water safety messages in.
Absolutely. So you built up to it. You've done a lot of different types of adventures. That's wonderful. I didn't know you had been an outdoor education type teacher, which is neat, for so many years. So you have that in your soul.
Yeah.
Again, stand-up paddling is an amazing vessel, and it really is quite flexible. So interesting that you started with sup surfing, and then, oh, can I go around, like you said, the headlands, and where can I go with this, and where is the next adventure? But being the first to do things takes a lot of chutzpah, they say. You have to have a confidence, which you've earned over a lifetime of being on the water, I would think. Um, but I think I really give kudos to people like you who have also taken it as a chance to get people to listen, and you get attention, and therefore you can give out that message. So we want to talk a lot about safety and about that message. But how about just the actual act of 141 days of going around Britain? Can we talk a little bit about that adventure that happened in 2021, right?
Yeah, so this time last year I was just sort of coming to the end of it. Yeah, 141 days. I'll keep it as simple as possible, really. I suppose the paddling, the majority of the paddling, because I trained for it, I was prepared for it. The gnarly headlands, the big beaches, and I wanted to do it unsupported, because I wanted to show that you could leave from a beach and all that's entailed in getting out there, which, let's face it, some days took 4 or 5 attempts over the course of 2 or 3 hours just to get through
Wow.
breaking waves, on certain beaches. And because I had to start where I left off the day before, there's no thinking, well, I'm going to go to the end of the beach and start there, because that wouldn't be every inch covered. So, I wanted to do it in that manner, which meant that 80% of the paddling was good, solid paddling. 20% was horrific, because you had, those days where you had the big wind on your back, and you knew that 50k down the road, that big wind was coming in at 8-10 foot swell breakers coming in, and some were easy and cruised in and brilliant, and others I absolutely binned out. There was a surf lifesaving club in North Devon where it's not far from here, it's around the southwest coast, and the whole of the surf lifesaving club ladies group, was about 50 women, came out to see me come in. And I've never come in on that beach before, so I didn't really realize that the way the rocks, I needed to stick out far left to come back in on right. And it wasn't until I'm surfing in did I suddenly see these rocks appearing.
Oh,
And
yikes.
I absolutely, the nose went in and I flew. I remember flying through the air thinking, all these people are watching me. So, it didn't go smoothly always, but the whole point was to kind of prove that it could be done with the right confidence. And there are times when up in Scotland that, the weather, I pride myself on being able to read the weather and understand the weather and react to it. But sometimes when the weather comes off mountains, it changes in 15 minutes. And if you're 20K off the coast, there's not much you can do about it. So there were a couple of times where I just got in the water and held onto the back of that board and just try to stop it from being taken in the wind and the waves, but that's kind of, you can't do these things unless you understand that potentially could happen. And if it does, and if it's going to inevitably happen, that's when you have to look at yourself and think, have I got the skills? Have I got the experience? And I can just get through this. So, I have a mentality that means that I won't take risks, but they're calculated risks to some people. And, I've got a family. I'm not going to go out there and be crazy about these things, but you do have to take calculated chances if you're going to be the first person to do something where other people have tried and failed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, you kind of hit all the points because, as you said, you have, a background in adventuring. You had done the physical act of preparing, but let's get back to mental again. You said the mentality. There must have been some moments out there because that's one of the hardest parts of many different types of extreme or distance is when your head starts telling you you can't, or that little negative voice comes up. Did you have some of those moments?
So I'll break it down to two things there. One, I'll break it down to the mental load that is 141 days. But first I'll say about that one day I had the moment, and that was on day one. So on day one, I put my paddle in the water. Bearing in mind, my training meant that I could go for 4 hours, half an hour break, 4 hours, half an hour break, 4 hours. I trained so I could do 12 hours a day paddling. So I'm in good shape. And that first paddle went in, and I thought, what the hell am I doing? Because the reality of that first paddle, when you've got 8 more million, is brutal. And the first day, I should have got 60, 70K. I managed about 30, and yet it took 5 times the length I should have done because the way the winds were.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I'm going to do this or not, if I'm going to fail, I best I fail on day one and just say, do you know what? This ain't happening. Rather than in a month's time and waste so many people's time and all those people that invested in watching and following. So on day one, I felt like that and I thought, right, well, I'm going to do this. So smile in your face and crack on. And do you know what? I never doubted myself on another day after that. Not at all.
Wow.
And then of course, I averaged 10 hours a day on the board, and 10 hours a day left to yourself can be horrific. It can be dangerous. It really can. So I played lots of games. I had a structure to my day. My first hour was about settling myself into the paddle. That the first 20 minutes are always the hardest till you get a bit of a sweat on, and so that first hour prepares you for the paddle. Second hour was very much about devotion for me. So just thanking for the day before and looking forward to the day ahead, and then thinking about the people I'd interacted with. So that took another hour. And then I had a couple of entertainment hours, so it might be a bit of music or play some games. And one of the best games I played that people love to hear, it took me 3 days. So 3 days is about 30 hours to name every human being I know.
Oh, there you go.
So, your mind goes down different avenues. So, my university days, and I'm naming all of those people, my school days, the people that came to you, can you name everybody that came to your wedding? Simple. Yeah, it takes real time and thinking about it. And whilst you're doing that, suddenly to keep yourself entertained. Otherwise, those little creeping things come in and say, you can't do this, or that was really hard. Why don't you give up and have another rest? And you start thinking like that, which you just can't do if you're going to go around. Because if you don't paddle, no one's going to paddle for you. So you've got to get those days done every day.
Yeah. Wow, that is fascinating. And thank you for sharing. I've never really thought about, because I've never done anything like what you've done, um, maybe for one day, but to break it up is so smart to really have a plan for your day. You did get a comment here from Sup Cambridge Sean, who says it was an absolute honor to paddle alongside you and chat. So did you have some people join you at different places on the journey?
Yeah. So do you know what? We started off and the weather wasn't great for the first couple of months. So I didn't see anybody for a few couple of months. And then we got to Scotland and nobody wants to paddle in the type of days that we had up in Scotland, because they weren't particularly pleasant. So it wasn't really till we got back down to the south coast that amazing people started to come out. And that was just awesome. Anyone who would come and give up 2, 3, 4 hours of their time to come and paddle, and often then would get somewhere and have to wait around to be picked up or whatever because it was too far to paddle back. So all those things, indebted to these amazing people that came and did that because it helped me. And they're the memories as well that you form. So I've got some great memories of paddling with some really cool people that perhaps I wouldn't normally paddle with. And that adds to the journey and adds to enriching what we were trying to do.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Was that kind of part of your plan, going up and going through some of the tougher weather and topography first? Did you think that, oh, people will join me towards the end? Plus, you've already proven, wow, he's almost there. So that's pretty exciting too.
Well, certainly every bit has its own challenges, but certainly the South Coast deemed to be the easiest bit to finish on. And if you look at the weather, I did a lot of looking into the weather over the last 10 years, the charts, and to go clockwise should have meant I had favorable weather. It just happens that last year, if I'd gone anti-clockwise, it probably would have been better. But hey, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, weather patterns have changed a bit, but still important to study and so important to know. You have a request from Fat Stick Boards to tell your orca story. So
orca story. So picture the scene. In Scotland, you can paddle almost all night because it doesn't really get dark. It gets dusk at about midnight, and it's dusk until 3, half 3 in the morning, and then it's light again. So there's not much nighttime. So you can, often I'd be paddling till midnight quite easily, and make the most of, because often the conditions are a lot stiller at that sort of time. So make the most of that. So I'm paddling. It's about 10 o'clock at night, and the birds have all gone to sleep. So normally on the cliffs of Scotland, there are millions of birds. So the noise is just off the scale, a real cacophony of noise. So they've all gone to sleep. So suddenly it's quiet. And that's a glorious paddling. It's real glory couple of hours of paddling. And it's about 10 o'clock. And as I'm paddling, a boat suddenly, and bear in mind, I'm 5 days from humans. I'm miles away from anywhere. And suddenly a boat comes up behind me. And it surprises me so much that I did a step back to look at this thing coming behind me and stepped off the side of my board because it was such a surprise. And I realized as I'm falling into the water that this boat that I thought was behind me was in fact a killer whale. And killer whales, I've never seen them in captivity. I've never seen a killer whale. So I didn't realize that it's like a minibus coming through the water. It's huge. And I'm sitting in the water as this beast of a creature, but glorious creature, just cruised past the other side of my board. And the eye looking at me still wakes me up at night now. And it just looked at me as it went past and cruised off. And as it cruised off and I'm sitting in the water, I've got my breath back and I'm thinking, okay, did that really just happen? As I'm climbing back, I only fell off my board 14 times and one was in front of a killer whale, and I'm climbing back onto my board. And as I'm climbing back on, one just cruised behind my feet. And I was like, okay, this is not, I want to get off the water now. I'm not so comfortable here. They've never eaten anybody as far as we know. But the way I look at it is if they wanted to eat you, there'd be nothing left to prove that they ate you. So, I'm a bit more cautious around
Yeah.
orcas in the wild, should we say? A bit more cautious.
Yes. I mean, whales and sharks, I love to see them, but there's no, of course your heart is going to race, and orcas are supposed to be so intelligent. And I truly think they sense that we're also intelligent creatures, and that's why they don't eat us, but they certainly have the teeth and the mouths and the
They
ability
do. But
if
you know
they
what?
want to.
Two more
Ooh.
times that night they came to see me, and until they're about 50 meters from you, they're hunting you until they realize that you're not masquerading as a seal. You are a human. And the way they pincer movement on you, and then they just disperse. And that's always a little bit worrying for a creature to be. I know I've never been hunted in my life before,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
to feel that it
Humbling.
changes the way you look at life. It really
Yeah.
does.
Wow. What an experience. Yeah, so people are talking about being emotional paddling with you from Sarah. Um, Inspirational. You are a true inspiration. And we haven't even talked about all the great stuff. The Bartender Town Boys. Now, you got to tell me what that's about.
Say that again. What was that? Bartender?
Oh, barter. I'm sorry. I read bartender. I'm like, oh, did we stop for drinks? The Barter Town Boys.
Bartertown.
Northern Vision Z.
Bartertown. Do you know what? Britain is I saw so much of Britain that, not many people can say they've seen every coastal town on an island like that. And I've seen them
Yeah.
all. And unfortunately, one or two of them do look a little bit like Bartertown from Mad Max.
Oh, that's, I didn't get the reference. Yes.
And,
Love that.
and, the way they look at you, it's a bit like Bartertown. It's a quick in, it's a quick out. I'm not going to say where those places are, but they're just, every country has them. So yeah, there was some Bartertown moments.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. They explain Mad Max. Yeah. Tell us about the door. Wow. You guys are doing my job for me. I love this. The door. Does that mean something to you from Hell's Bells
Yeah,
to Six?
yeah. So that follows on from the Orca story, basically. It's about a week or 2 weeks after the Orcas, and I'm going around a gnarly headland, and you know the way headlands work, the water channels. Sometimes you hit the tides at the wrong time, and there's standing waves jacked up, and I'm punching through the standing waves, and they're fairly big, so I can't see over the top of them. So you go punch through one, and you don't know what's the other side. And as I punched through one, on the top of the one in front of me, I saw white, and what looked like black. So all of a sudden, I'm thinking, there's a killer whale coming through the wave at me. It's going to eat me. And as I punched, because there's nothing, you can't get out of it. You're going in one direction because the flow is so strong. And I punched through the top of the wave. And as I'm coming down, there's basically somebody's front door, a massive white plastic front door, still in the frame with a number 14 on. And it was a door. So somebody
Number and
somewhere
everything.
is missing their number 14 door because it's in the sea off the North Scotland coast.
Isn't that wild? It would be so cool if sometime down the line somebody says, oh, we did a remodel and that was my door.
Yeah, did they just throw it in the sea? Who knows? I saw quite a bit of litter, but I never saw a full front door with the frame all still attached,
Well, I'm glad it was a door and not, we didn't have to change the story about the whales not getting you.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
trust me,
Great
I was
story.
happy with that too.
Yeah. Well, as an instructor, as a crusader, you have a lot to tell about SUP and equipment, but I want to stay on adventuring for a moment and talk about your kit, one of my favorite words, which in America, we don't really have a good word for that. So kit, we need to adopt that. So
Clobber.
it's sometimes more than just the board and paddle. What did that kit look like?
I call it the clobber, or the clobber. God, there's a lot of clobber involved. There's lots of kit involved with doing this type of activity because every day can be different. So there were the days where I'm almost like a submarine because the weather's hitting you from all sides, and I've got a dry suit on.
Dry suit.
And then right down, the dry suit I probably wore 3 or 4 days max out of the 141. And then what I class as my summer gear, shorts and boardies, I also only wore for 4 days out of the 141. So the other 130 odd was everything in between. Semi-dry suits. I'm not a big neoprene fan, so I don't tend to wear much neoprene because it boils you a bit too much. Yeah. But everything in between, from, a lot of kit I wear is the same sort of kit that you would wear if you were walking on the mountain. Good breathable kit that also protects you from the water coming that way. And it's comfortable. And if you're wearing kit for 10 hours, 16 hours, it can't chafe, it can't go crusty. It's got to be good quality kit. So that was my clothing kit. And then obviously we camping in vans, or I was camping on beaches. So all the kit that I needed for that. I never slept in a tent. I make a bivouac and sleep under that. And then cooking gear and all the sort of clobber that you would take if you were going on the mountain, really, was this type of stuff that kept us alive when we came in off a paddle. Because I just want to eat, have a chat, talk to humans, because you hadn't talked to them all day, and then sleep, and then you just did it again the next day.
Wow. Yeah. The paddling paramedic was asking about support. I'm guessing you had a first aid kit and thought about safety in terms of leashes, flotation.
Yeah. So on me, I had obviously a leash and a spare leash. I only snapped a couple of leashes on the whole trip, which was good. I always wore buoyancy and try to demonstrate that buoyancy comes in different forms, from the big full-on buoyancies through to inflatable small packets, and all the buoyancies in between, to kind of demonstrate different price points. You can buy a really cheap buoyancy and it can do a good job. So demonstrating that. And then the kit, I had 5 forms of communication on the board. So,
Wow.
if phones didn't work, a phone, my watch is a separate cell phone. So I had that, which is obviously attached to me. And then GPS, satellite tracking, an EPIRB, and a radio. So, all those different forms meant that I was always, if I needed to be, in contact, because I didn't have support on the water. But I did have support on the land. So Harry, who's coming with me in Northern Ireland, was in charge of the kind of day-to-day running and looking after the van. And then Will, who was the photographer, was having the nightmare task of going miles ahead to try and see if he could get a good shot of me coming by, or video. So those guys made it happen. It was the 3 of us. And then with Zoe and Lucy back in Torquay, that kind of the 5 people that made it happen, because you can't do these things on your own. You really can't.
Yeah. And that's such an important thing to acknowledge all those other people. It's a solo paddle and it did take you, but you got to have that teamwork behind you.
Totally.
Joseph wanted to know what board you're riding. Hardboard, inflatable?
Yeah, for that type, it has to be a hardboard. For me, so I ride that for this, it was a SICK bullet and an SIC bullet. It's a fantastic ocean board, but also it surfs well. It cuts through chop well. And most of the time you are dealing with side-on chop. So you're just doing that motion for hours on end. So you need a board that can cope with that. So SIC bullet board and a blackfish paddle, both stood up amazingly to the test. And I'll be going around Ireland, using that bits of kit as well as other bits of kit in that journey to again, demonstrate the different types of boards that you can do these things on, because trying to make it accessible to everybody, and those bits of kit aren't cheap bits of kit, so they are inaccessible to some. So Ireland's about showing and demonstrating all the other forms of kit that can be used as well, and still do it well.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant, because as you said, the planning and all is most important, but also being able to demonstrate to other people what to use, like the different types of buoyancy, is awesome. Oh, we've got more questions. Explain your music wind chart again.
So the problem with explaining this is sometimes it slightly offends people with their music choice. So so what it's like. If you've got wind in your face, it's horrible. So Wind in My Face is, for me, the worst possible band on planet Earth is the Carpenters. So if it was Carpenter's Wind, it was Wind in My Face. If it was Wind on My Back, it was a definite Pearl Jam day. It was an NXS, it was a Duran Duran day on my back. So I created this chart of where the wind's coming from in relation to the good and the bad
Oh
bands that are
my
on
gosh,
planet
I
Earth.
love that. You're too young for the Carpenters. Is that something your parents played and you just drove you crazy?
Do you know what? I thank you for that, but unfortunately, Carpenters did play a little bit of time in my youth, and I rebelled against it massively.
I love that. That's funny. And it is interesting though. Wind and Face, we were saying yesterday, it was very hot here. And once in a while, it's nice to have a little bit of a breeze when you have the heat, but you had a lot more of the other type of thing.
Yeah, it was the cold breeze.
Yeah. So the kit, super important. But let's switch to messages about safety. And I don't want to bring, I mean, such an inspiration, such an upper hearing about your trip. But drownings are a reality. And around any watercraft, but I know here in the US, they really track very carefully kayak, canoe, and stand up. Not surfing, but anyway, so we have these numbers, and it's very sad to say annually, X number of people died when they were paddleboarding. So what are some things we can do? Like start from scratch. What's one of your or some of your messages that are important to get out about safety?
So if you wouldn't, no one would ever jump into a yacht and take it out for a spin if they've never been in a yacht before. No one would ever get a surfboard and jump into 8-foot swell if they've never done it before. And yet, if you buy a stand-up paddleboard, you think you can buy it and just take it out and do it. And so lesson, it's got to be, you get a lesson, get yourself a lesson, because a lesson will tell you what you don't know. And that's the biggest problem on the water. People don't know what they don't know. So they don't know that if they go around that headland, the wind will be different. The conditions will be different. They don't know that if they fall off, can they get back on? The most simplest of things. So for stand-up paddleboarding, it's got to be get yourself a lesson. Get a good person to teach you for an hour about all the basics of paddling, but also the wind, the tides, what the river's doing, flow, and all those other bits. So it's got to be a lesson. It really has. And if we all had a lesson, we're having beaches around here that are having 100 rescues a day. It's crazy. It's crazy, and I'm sure it's the same in the States. And it's the ones that, it probably will be, 1 in a million chance that it goes wrong, but it still means that we're getting 14, 15 deaths from stand-up paddleboarding in the last few months on an island where we should all know better, but we just don't. We just don't, because we don't know what we don't know.
That is such a good point, that we don't know what we don't know, or people who are new to water don't know that. I live on a coastal town where there's many deaths because they're just unaware of the potential of so safety, one of the biggest things. Sometimes we focus more on just learning to paddle and not have your paddle backwards and that type of thing. And that's important in that first lesson too. But the safety, I think, is the most essential. Well, you are, I think you're president and you've been a lifeguard, and swimming is one of the things I think we don't mention very often, and I feel pretty strongly about. I'm still fascinated that people, not fascinated, disappointed, sad. I think you should know how to swim when you go out on the water.
You really should. You really should. I mean, the stats in Britain say that if you can swim, you've got an 80% better chance of survival.
Right.
And swimming is, for me, is one of the biggest reasons I can read the water. Because if you're sat in the water thinking I need to swim 20 miles today because I've done some big swimming, if you don't understand the water, you're either going to be going backwards or you're going to be taken in the wrong direction. So you have to be able to read the water. And I think that's one of my greatest bits that I'm so proud about, that because I did the swimming, when I'm on the board, it's easy because I can see it moving. I can see it changing direction. I can see what it's doing. And swimming is a big part of my life. I swim every single day. and my children do, and my wife do. We get in the sea every single day, and it's a big part of understanding what the water is. And when you understand it like that, you can see the many people around you that, my wife tells me sometimes just to switch it off because I'm swimming and I'm like those guys go around that headland like it looks like they're going to do, they're in trouble. So now I'm swimming over to just politely say, and sometimes they listen, and most of the time they tell you to sling your hook.
That's a tough part of trying to share your good intentions and your advice. People don't
Yeah.
always want to hear it, but it's important to try. So thank you. Don't give up. Continue to try.
You got to do it with a smile on your face and joke and normally they understand because you explain why, and sometimes I actually swim round corners with them to show them, and they realize very quickly then.
Oh yes, there's a tide. There's a rip tide here or something. True. So there are certain organizations I think you've promoted and brought attention to. Do you want to give a shout out to maybe some of those doing good work
Yeah,
out?
so I actually formed the charity Above Water, which is the water safety and education charity. It goes into schools. So we've been supporting that in everything we're doing. And the plan is a 5-year plan now. What was once a 1-year plan of last year has actually turned into a 5-year plan to try and get. Do you know what? If you hand a child a leaflet, a water safety leaflet, out of courtesy, they'll look at it, but they'll look at it for about 11 seconds. If you give them a game to play, which has the same information on, they'll play it for about 11 minutes. You can get a lot of info across in 11 minutes. So we're trying to create a water safety app, gamified app that
Oh,
children
fun.
can play.
Yeah.
So, that's a lot of money. And when I started this journey about 4 years ago, it wasn't as much as it is now, because in the last 4 years, prices of everything have gone through the roof. So that's why it's turned into a 5-year plan. So, of course, we support water safety charities. So in Britain, it's the RL&I who do a fantastic job. Wave Project to take children who just need that extra boost in life into the waves to experience the joy and the furore and doing a bit of surfing. Big supporter of Christian surfers, so supporting all the good work they do in just giving so many people the opportunity to enjoy the water and get in the water. Men's mental health in Britain, boys my age basically are going through some really difficult times. So we support different projects that really support men to find that one thing that to keep them, from going into dark places. And that was basically the journey we went on to kind of support these charities, as well as on my own one as such, and just kind of get that more message of blue space and safety and also certificates against sewage, which we supported, which, I'm sure it's the same in the States. There are too many big, bad, ugly companies putting all their waste into the sea and trying to get away with it. And that can't be the case. So, I saw a lot of pollution being pumped into the sea. It's funny that when the days were the darkest and the fog came in, that's when they chuck it out because they know they can get away with it because no one can see it. But when you're out there on the water in the middle of nowhere, you can smell it, you can feel it, and then of course you've got all the litter that's in the water. And I did some studies on the board, just calculating, adding up the numbers of what I was finding, and gave a top 25. But if I just give you the top 3 things I found when I was on the water last year,
Yeah.
Number 3, Haribo little packets. The little plastic packets.
Oh, are
for
they
children.
gummies?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the ones. They're the
Yeah.
ones. Those little packets.
Wow.
With
That's
different,
one brand.
yeah, really specific, and different languages on them. So they're obviously from around the world and have all come into different beaches in Britain. So that was number 3. Number 2 was celebration balloons,
Yeah.
banners, all that type of stuff. And then of course, number one is the fishing tackle. But I didn't include all the fishing stuff because that's obvious. That's number one because there's so much of it. But for me, the number one thing that I would just kind of see absolutely everywhere was PPE, so masks and gloves from the whole COVID thing. You know, just masses of it.
Yeah.
Just masses of it.
Such a negative byproduct of this strange time in the world was all that extra stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Everywhere,
absolutely.
land and water. Wow, that's fascinating. And so many, you just mentioned so many great causes and so many, initiatives and things that we should care about, but super excited for you and the game that you're creating. That's a brilliant idea. Talk about using your background as a teacher and understanding about how to connect and how to get a message through, and not just talk at kids, but let them play.
Yeah, I mean, lots of the games that we play to demonstrate what a rip is, for example, is putting those into a gamified version, but also a gamified version that could be specific to the beach they're going to. So you could ask a child to play that game because they're going to that particular beach, and there's a rip at that particular beach if the waves are doing what they're doing. So that's where it costs a lot of money. So, hopefully you'll be talking to me in 4 years' time with the game in front of you on your phone and be able to play it. That's the idea.
I look forward to that. Well, your cousin wants to know, and you're having a lot of kudos and people saying how amazing you are and your team. What was the greatest stage or your greatest achievement? What stage was your greatest achievement?
Sorry, say that again.
What stage was your greatest achievement? Go Cousins, super proud, from MW Sparks.
Hey, Matthew's my cousin. Goodness me. Matthew, greatest stage. There were times that I would paddle, and there's a couple of times where local people would come to me and say, "We don't want you to paddle around this headland because
Really?
it's never been paddled on a Stavern paddle before, and you're going to die."
Oh.
Which is never great to hear just before you just let the set off. So sometimes those moments where you do paddle, and you can understand where they're coming from, but your experience and your knowledge just gets you through it. And then there was the obvious ones, the big crossings. So 50, 60, 70K crossings from one side to another of the different elements of the British coast were good achievements, really good achievements. Those moments where you've got a 2-hour window and you manage to get that 15K in and you're battling, may only be 2 hours of your life, but if you'd still been there 2.5 hours later, you probably would be in trouble. And it's hard to articulate exactly where those moments are and what they are involved. But, a lot of the type of paddling you do when you're adventure paddling is you're trying to get through gates. And if you miss a gate, that can have big consequences to what happens in half an hour's time, of being able to get around the headland with the right tide. Sometimes it was the most minuscule gates that I absolutely slogged to make sure I hit, that with a big thumbs up moments. And that's hard to kind of tell because people want to know that, well, it was that time when I surfed that 12-foot wave in, but often it wasn't those moments. Excuse me.
Sometimes it's those, what might appear to be small victories, but really were a major accomplishment to do those types of things.
Totally.
Well, it's almost September, and I understand that you are going to make another attempt at a big, long paddle.
Well, nowhere near as big. So Northern Ireland is part of the UK, and I wanted to complete the package of going all the way around England, Scotland, Wales, and of course Northern Ireland. And the beauty about Northern Ireland is because obviously it's at the top of Ireland, only half of it is coastal water. The other half is all the inland waterways. And because...
Oops, you froze for a moment. Hopefully we'll get you right back.
Is that working?
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
There we go. So Northern Ireland, because it's coastal, but also you've got the inland waterways. I can really demonstrate and highlight going on canals and rivers and locks and doing all these other aspects, because a lot of people only paddle on those type of waterways. They don't paddle on the sea.
Mhm.
So I can really highlight good practice and just have a really fun journey going through, which is more about engagement and talking about the routes and the planning and the kit and all of that, rather than every day banging out, 10 hours of paddling. So because it's much shorter, I can be a bit more relaxed, and just kind of enjoy the adventure and really highlight the adventure in a way that, before I couldn't stop and take photos, or, I just plow through. Whereas now I can actually stop and appreciate it a little bit more, because I've got 3 weeks to paddle around,
Okay.
just under 600K in 3 weeks. So, it's quite leisurely, really.
Comparatively, yes. To most of us, that still sounds quite intimidating, but wonderful. So, about 3 weeks, you said how far. Do you have a plan? Are you kind of watching the weather for when you're going to be taking off? And then also, how do we follow you? How do we watch?
So I'll be starting on either the 7th, 8th, or 9th of September.
Okay.
And the reason a 3-day start is just to adjust with the weather. And again, I won't actually choose where I'm starting until I know what the conditions are doing. So I could be going clockwise, I could be going anti-clockwise, I could be starting with the coast, I could be starting with the inland waterways, because I've only got this three-week window. I have to work with the weather beautifully, And if the weather's right at the right times, I'll attempt a couple of world record paddles whilst I'm out there, which will just keep everybody kind of entertained, and they can follow all of that on the website, because the website, thelongpaddle.co.uk, will have a tracker on there, so you can see where I am, what I'm up to every day. And of course, through social media, Long Paddle Sup, everything we'll be putting on there every day to, engage, tell you stories about what we're doing, and also highlight the water safety and just have a bit of fun.
Wonderful. So you just said your website. You have, I know, at least 2 Instagrams, one your own name with a little underscore at the end, and the other one is it's Long
The
Paddle Sup, right?
Long Paddle Sup. Yeah.
Without but the website has the Long Paddle.
The Long Paddle. The website's a bit more
Okay.
formal.
No, but it's wonderful. So everybody make sure that you're following Brendon in these many different areas. And that's very exciting. That's just a couple of weeks away. Super exciting. I get to meet Sup Junkie UK about that time too. She's going to be in Poland. I've never met her in person.
You've never met her. Sarah is a wonderful woman. You two will get on like a house on fire.
Yep. I think so. We're very, very similar. Just I told her I want her shirt, but that says USA instead of UK. I want to be
You're a Sup Junkie.
I want to be her. Who's your support for Northern Ireland?
So Harry's with me again for Northern Ireland, but we haven't got a photographer with us. Harry's going to venture into a bit of photography in what he's doing. He highlighted some really good practice on the circumnavigation before, so he's going to do a bit of that. And it's more about this sort of photography, this sort of engagement photography on a day-to-day basis. So Harry's in charge of all that. And then there's going to be a few really cool people coming to paddle with me at certain times as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, that just sounds fantastic. Again, your water safety causes, is there, I guess you have a 5-year plan. So maybe is there what do you call them? Jump starter or something campaign, or any way to help with you getting your app out there? Is that listed somewhere, or is that the website the best place to learn about that?
Yeah, so the new website goes live, ready for Northern Ireland. So that would all change for that. I've realized that because I know a few people, including my wife, who's into apps development.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that kind of helps, and it kind of shows me the good and the bad of it, that what I'm letting myself in for. So we've really realized to actually take a few steps backwards and get the groundwork of all the material and the evidence that we need to then push it out there and really show people, actually, we do need this. Not just because at the minute it's just me saying that we need it. And unfortunately, no one wants to put down £1 million investment without the stats. So it's all about gaining those stats and gaining the traction with a bigger audience. that we can be in a better position, because for a gamified app of this, it's a couple of million now, really. So it's changed the dynamics of what we're trying to achieve. So it's baby steps. We could have put money into something last year that actually would have been not really good after a few months, and then you've kind of wasted. So it's got to be right. And unfortunately, kids nowadays are used to epic games and Marvel and big impact and proper graphics. So we're competing up against that, really. So if anyone from Epic Games is out there, or Marvel, or want to share some of those experiences, please get hold of me, because that's where we need to look into, really.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of fans that are local they're watching now, but we also have people on SubConnect from all over the world. And you speak so highly of the wonderful family you have, but also Devon. I don't know if you were born there, but that's your home in the southern part of England. Kind of paint a picture of what your home area is like when you're not out adventuring.
So my home area, I've spent a lot of time in the States and Canada. So where I live, Devon, is very much like British Columbia. It's very much like Seattle or Vancouver, in the same sort of climate, lots of rain. But when the sun shines, it's lovely and it's very green. So, that's the comparison. Lots of small little valleys, little tiny harbors, and good water movement. We've got surf on the north coast and great distance paddling on the south coast. And it's 2 hour and a half, 2 hours difference from the two. So, there's lots of options that we have to paddle around here. I was born in Wales. I'm a Welshman. But I've spent more of my life in Devon, so I call myself a Welsh Devonian to people that meet me.
A Welsh Devonian, got it. Caldecott, is that a place near you?
Caldecott was where I went to school when I was 14, 15, 16. As somebody said from Caldecott, goodness me.
A. Lewis. 542.
Andy Lewis. Andy Lewis was my best man.
Oh, so special. That's wonderful. And yes, Sarah's reminding us to congratulate you again on SubConnect Man of the Year. I'm not involved in that, but I know there's many pieces that go into it, and you really exemplify the inspirational type of paddler out there doing a lot of great things. And also, there was the popular vote too, which you won. So it has many parts to it. So well deserved. And I feel so lucky that I get to talk to you and that you are willing to spend the time. Because
do you know what, I was amazed with the SubConnect Man of the Year. Why was I amazed? I was amazed because it's a lot of the traction from SubConnect is obviously stateside, and for you guys to recognize what I'm doing over here, I don't think a British man has won it before. And when you look down, a few people on that list, I know Bo Nixon, for example, and a few others, to have me, that's me, my little face on there, is a great motivator for what I want to do next year and the year after, and to really promote SUP for what it is, the amazing sport it is, and how we can get so much out of it. But obviously safety, is a big part. And I'm really looking forward to coming to Florida in December to do the Last Paddler Standing, which I think is a fantastic concept.
yeah,
As a paddle race.
it is. Oh, that's great. You're going to do that. Yeah, I should be. I try to pay attention to. He's really highlighting. I think that's wonderful as you guys sign up to do that. Explain that event, because I think it is a cool one.
Well, for me, it ticks all my boxes of paddling. So on the top of every hour, you paddle a course, which is about 5 kilometers. So it can be done in an hour quite easily. So you can smash it out and then have a break, or you can take it steady and not have a break. But at the start of the hour, you've got to do it again. And after 48 hours, they increase the distance that you have to paddle in that hour. So for me, I put aside a couple of weeks, because I'm happy to paddle for a couple of weeks. So I'm hope there's somebody up there that can challenge me to keep me going, because you just keep going until somebody wants to stop. And the best of it is when there's only 2 people left, and somebody says, "I can't do it anymore. I pulled out." You've still got to do one more lap on your own, which I love. I love that mental challenge. I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that.
From how you described your training of going for a while, much longer than that, but taking breaks in between sounds absolutely ideal for this type of race. And it is very unique. I've never heard of a format like that. So that will be very interesting for all of us to follow. I'm sure you will do very well. So even you have quite a bit still planned for this year. Wow, for 2022.
Yeah, lots to happen, lots to happen. And
Yeah.
this film that actually the Banff Film Festival is touring with, and we're touring with, gets into full effect from September as well. So, you know, if you're ever I think it's coming over to the States after Christmas. But Circumnavigate is the film, and that really shows what the challenge of paddling around Britain was all about. And it's different. It's not what you all expect, because, I mean, let's face it, you're not going to sit for an hour and a half and watch me paddleboard. That would be a bit dull. So it's a really unique. Will Redaway has put this film together that I think as it comes out and more people see it, will be quite amazed. And you know, it's spreading the word, it's spreading the message that I'm trying to create. Yeah. So I'm big fan of it.
Wonderful. We'll be looking for that. Are there places? So the Banff Film Festival is traveling. I think you said something like that. Can you buy it or download it somewhere, or not yet?
So not yet, because we've got film festivals to enter it in and do all that first, and then the mass viewing capacity will come afterwards.
Great, fantastic. Well, it has been my honor to get to chat with you today and to learn more about the incredible journeys and things that you've done already and what you've got coming up. We will be looking for you going around Northern Ireland and Last Man Standing race in December, and continue to inspire and spread the word and do good things through your adventures. Thank you so much.
Well, what a joy to talk to you, and a privilege, you know, with all your background, just to sit and chat. And I could probably talk with you for another hour about you. So maybe for another time when I come over to the States.
That's right. Yes, come visit California. We're pretty far from Florida, but next time. Yes. Thank you, Joseph. Absolutely. And Sarah, everyone listening. And remember to tell your friends that this is immediately on IGTV on SupConnect, and then it will be on YouTube within a couple of days. Both SupConnect and mine, KT Outside. Thank you again, Brendon. And thanks, everybody listening.
God bless.
Mwah. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.